Exactly. So you match what Exactly. So you'd match what the prospects are talking, the way they're talking to you about. For instance, if someone's, you know, a top CEO in a company, they don't have, you know, 10 minutes to have a conversation with you. They're very rushed on the phone. They've been called a few times already, so they're quite direct. So you need to be able to be sharp, quick, and get your initial line out. So initially for me, it's always been the case where I introduce myself. So I'd be a Sajan here calling from De Veer. Hope the timing isn't too bad, or, you know, ask them if it's a good time to speak, or ask them if you've got a few seconds, if you can grab them for. So everyone has a different way of entering the initial pitch. As you've seen there, for myself, I normally ask, you know, do you have a quick minute? Or is this a good time to speak, or something like that? And that's when you can break it up with them, where you can say, if they say yes, got a quick minute, they're giving you the bit of time, right? But I'm not going to go into the objection handling side of things, because I think Matt's doing them. So you might face an objection there or not. And then after that, you want to be able to introduce the company. So this introduction bit, you need to be able to learn it at the back of your head. Like if you're speaking to someone, you know, in the elevator, I know you've probably heard about an elevator pitch before, but you know, you should be able to get it out the system as quick as possible. You know, introducing yourself, the company, and what we offer. Those are the three things you do in your introduction. That's how I normally break it down. And if you looked at the older sort of pitch structure that we've used as well for the trainings, it's similar in that sense, where, you know, they introduce themselves, the company, and what we do, right? So that bit is very important. And after you've done that bit, one of the key things which you'll hear from some of the senior members in the company, so for instance, Niall, Chris, people who've been doing the job for 10 years now, is that they pause, they give the prospect time to speak. That's key when you're pitching.
First loses.
Exactly. Well, you need to speak first if you're calling them. But once you're able to get a hold of them and you've introduced yourself, give them a second, pause, wait for their reaction. It's all about being able to react to what they say to yourself. So that's where, you know, another thing comes in, which is mirroring. So if someone's reacting in the sense where they're just very relaxed in the conversation with you, they're happy to have a conversation, you know, at that point you can put your feet up and have a conversation. You know, talk to them like you're one of your mates at the pub at that point. But if someone's, you know, held up, they're quick onto the point, they're like, what's this about? You know, give me all the information you can as soon as possible. That's when you run in with the full pitch as quick as possible, but also making sure that they understand what you're trying to talk about. You don't want to confuse them on the call as well. So that leads me on to, you know, so then mirroring and tonality is very important. As you said, as you guys answered that correctly, which is, you know, matching the way they speak to you, but also making sure the way your answering technique on them and your questioning techniques to them is also in line with what they believe. And so, you know, you're talking to, you know, a very soft-spoken person, you can speak very soft-spoken. If you're speaking to someone who's quite hard, you speak to someone with a bit more just behind your voice. So there's different, you know, methods you'll pick on while you do a few more calls in your time here, but from then, you know, you move on to the next step. So, you know, the next bit, the middle bit, is very key. Very key, because it's the bit you get the most information about a prospect. So, you know, you've probably seen on the pitch that I've given you guys, you know, I've asked them questions here, a lot of questions. Probably not too many on this thing, but, you know, questions about what they do, you know, where they work, you know, how long they've been in the region, if their family here. If they're open about these questions, then the conversation flows. You get a bit more knowledge about what to pitch them. So, for example, if someone's, you know, recently new to the region, they moved over with their family, you know, Ben, for example, you've been here for a bit of time, so what would you pitch them if it was someone new, recent to the country, and with the families here?
Maybe someone to do pension transfers, or if they've left their pension in the UK and they're going to be out here for a while, maybe settling outside of the UK, ask them about their pension.
Yeah, that's obviously one of the products that we work with, but especially if someone speaks about family, the one thing you want to touch on is that, because everyone speaks about their kids. Everyone loves their kids. If you don't love your kid, you wouldn't answer the questions you speak about. So, you know, it comes to the point where You ask them how are the kids finding it? How old are they at the moment? Are they enjoying the move over here? What's your sort of structure for them in the future? That's when you move into the more long-term planning sort of questions where you build into the product side of things. So you lead into an education plan sort of pitch. For instance, though, if someone was saying, I've just moved over here, I got no family, looking to just build as much as possible. Then you go on the retirement side of lines, and then you can obviously bring in the pension thing if they're not planning on back to the UK. They are planning on the UK, so there's multiple ways. You need to guide the questions down the route that you want to guide it. You control the conversation when you come into your pitch, right? You don't let them control the conversation as much as you want them to think it. That's the key element. You want them to believe they're leading the conversation. However, it's all in your hands at that point in time. So that's how you want to be able to align yourself when you're asking these questioning techniques. So when I say that, anyone sort of know any sort of questioning techniques they've ever come across or anything like that? Nothing?
So in terms of like their kids and stuff, be like, how much do you value like your kids' education for the future? You can go down the reg savings plan with that. Talk about long-term saving for education funds, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Personal questions about putting in there, or how much you care about your kids' future, what are you prepared to do, how much you prepared to sacrifice.
Yeah. So those are examples. But when it comes to not just the kids, obviously the education side of things, but general, whenever you're doing whatever kind of pitch, you've got open-ended questions, you've got closed-ended questions, you've got double-ended questions, you've got all kinds of stuff that's going on when you're learning and you're building your career into the sales side of things. So when you want a closed-ended question, you want someone to answer with a yes or a no, and you want to try and pick up as many small yeses as possible, because you've seen psychology says if you say yes enough times, your final answer will be yes. If you say no too many times, then your final answer will be no. But in this game, you want a mixture of both, yeses and nos. So if someone says, if you ask a simple question like, when was the last, have you had your pension reviewed in the last year? No. It puts doubt in their head. So these kind of questioning techniques, will put you in a position where you're able to pitch a lot better, your flow is a lot better, and you'll be able to convince them to say, all right, I actually have a problem here, I need to sit down with a specialist when it comes to my case. So questioning is very important. There's a whole bunch of them. You'll get all the help you need, whether it's from me or from any of the advisors or any of the other BDAs who've been here for, for a long time. They'll be able to explain, a bit more of the questioning side of things. So it's very specific to, obviously, each case that you speak to. But you just got to remember, try and get as many yeses. Even the no's are fine. You just got to batter through them and take them on. Then you got open-ended questions. Are you having a good time here? You want to make them feel like they're having a good conversation, and then go from there. So as you've seen probably in the earlier bit of the middle, as well as about the introduction bit, when I'm calling someone, this is personally for me. Everyone's got their own ways of doing this, but I like to specify where they're from. So let's say someone's working in Saudi at Saudi Aramco. I would say, the reason I'm reaching out to yourself is because we're working with a lot of British expats over at Saudi Aramco. A lot of your colleagues have been using our services in regards to the points I've been putting out. So whether it's the tax, the product side of things. It groups them in. So it's herd mentality when it comes to that point. You've probably seen in COVID, there was a lot of things that people, not just sales, but governments, herd mentality has always been a big thing when it comes to mindset of people. It comes to the sense that if someone says, you're working at Devere, if I say I'm working with your colleagues, helping them with this, you'll think to yourself, if my colleagues are working with them, well, why can't I can give them a few minutes of my time to see if they can actually help me with the same problems or something else. So you want to specify. I personally, and I've implemented this in the last 4 or 5 months, and the rate of people are more receptive to my pitch is just blown out the roof compared to what it used to be. Before, I used to just say I'm talking to expats in the Middle East. It's very generic. No one's, you're not really made them feel special about themselves. Yeah, exactly. It's just exactly. It's literally just open advertising at that point. But if you go directly into it, then you've made them feel like they're needed. Next question.
Have you ever come across anybody that's asked you, who are my colleagues?
So you've got to be very careful with that question as well, right? This is where this relates into my next point, which is your use of LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn for every prospect. I call. Every one of them. And so does everyone in that room, so does everyone in that room, so does everyone in the whole office. And if you're not using LinkedIn when you're calling, then you're going to mess up. Some people are good without it, the majority of the people need to use it. Purely because, as to answer your question there, if you're going to call someone from a company that's got 10 people inside it, you probably wouldn't use the same line. But you say, we're helping, actually you just say, give them a bit more of a generic, we're helping people in your region. So we're helping people in Saudi, we're helping people in Kuwait, we're helping people in Qatar, UAE. But majority of the time, you'll find a lot of companies out here that hire a lot of prospects that we speak to, the expats that we speak to, the majority big companies, the Mesas, the Saudi Aramcos, the Qatar Airways, all these big companies. So it's, once in a while you'll find we've had a few cases where, someone's called and said, we've worked with your colleague, and then the colleague sat next to them and then they say, have you actually spoken to these people before? And they're like, I've never heard of them before. So, be careful what you do. But that's one thing I'd definitely recommend to you guys when you're starting. I still use it till today. So does everyone in that room. You've probably seen some of the names that people come up, like some of the BDMs who've been here for years, 3 years now, 2 years. They still analyze LinkedIn, even analyze the areas that the people are. Even if the call doesn't go through, right? They know exactly what to do. So people will say, I've been to this area, this cafe near you. So if I'm pitching someone in EY or PwC down in Emaar Square, I know there's an Ultra down there, I know there's this there, so I can say, we're actually meeting people down there. Would it be viable for your time to also, if we met you there as well? So it's good to have a bit of knowledge about not just the company they work at, but also even if you're struggling with that bit, just the areas and what's around them as well. For instance, a lot of people in Saudi would cross the border to Qatar if they wanted to go out, have a bit of fun. So you can always have a conversation about that. So you'll learn these little tricks on the way while you're doing your pitches and working along some more senior BDAs. Another thing, obviously, in the middle bit is your rapport, right? Rapport for me is very key. Some people are very direct on their pitch. Some people prefer their rapport. Does anyone know what rapport is? What would you do when you? Yeah.
Is it when you kind of, say for example you're on LinkedIn, you see that they went to university, that was like the university that you went to, you could be like, I saw that you went to UCL, I stayed in X halls, did you enjoy it? I had a really good time, anything. It's just building a relationship.
Perfect, that's the best, that's a great answer. So that's exactly what I do, right? I went to the University of Nottingham, so whenever I'm looking for people who I want to speak to, then if I come across someone who's went to the University of Nottingham, then it's such an easy call for me, right? I'll go in with more confidence, even if he's, the CEO of JP Morgan, for example. He might be the most smart financially person in the world, but I can have a conversation out of him because we have something in common. Not just saying that you have to call people from your university or from your local town or your local, support your local football team or whatever it is, but you can create a rapport by doing your research as well. So, for instance, if I speak to South Africans, or if I speak to Australian, or if I speak to an Englishman or something, and I know sort of roughly where the area is they're from LinkedIn, again, where you get all this information about everyone, then you can build an image around them to think, oh my God, he actually knows this place, he knows this thing, he knows there's something that's more local to, where I'm from. So they're all more open to having a conversation. And what rapport does for people is it makes the prospect, first of all, drop their walls. So, if someone was to call you out the blue, right, and your busy day, your hand's already up. You're like, your head's gone up. Your defenses are in full alert because you don't know what's going on. You've never seen the number before. Someone's calling you out the blue and trying to sell you something, right? Or trying to have a meeting with you, or whatever it is, whatever the case is. So if you're able to break down those barriers, which you'll learn with Matt, which is the objection handling side of things, but rapport comes in massively with that as well, right? If you're able to have a conversation, like you said there, if someone went to the same university as yourself, and you'd be like, look, I know you've probably had a few calls already in the past, but I understand you went to UCL as well, I did as well. If you get that in early as possible, have a conversation with people from, for instance, I'll give you a great example. I spoke to someone who went to Hull when I was in university, Halls, which was I know of, which was too far for me, and we spoke about the pubs around the area, spoke about the sports at university, and all the notes on him. He had about 150, 200 notes on him, and he just hated cold calls, hated them. But now he's a client because he's I broke down the barriers. We had an initial just a conversation as a mate basically at this point. He doesn't know me. I know him well because I've done my research. But at that point, when you've broken down the barriers with rapport, then you're able to get your pitch out a lot easier. Makes the call a lot easier and makes booking a meeting a lot easier. So I personally use a lot of rapport, but there is a lot of people who also use just direct, get the pitch out, explain what do we do, ask them if it's relevant, if it is, close the deal. So it's up to you again on your style of pitching. Yes?
So when it is somebody like a CEO that's in a rush, how much report building do you do, or you just skip it? You just get it factual? So
you've got to judge it when you're doing your pitch. You'll learn this more on the practical side of things instead of the training side of things. When you're actually on the phone, you're calling people, it's more to do with how they react on the call. So I've had people, and also timing is key, right? When you're pitching someone who's a CEO, even doctors, high-profile lawyers, you've got to think to yourself, these people are in calls or in meetings all day. So from 10 o'clock till 5 o'clock, there's no point. Or you could give it a shot at lunchtime, but you've got to think about timings, right? So if I was, for instance, to call, a neurosurgeon, right? I call them the first thing in the morning that I get in, 9 o'clock in the morning, that's my first call. If I can't get a hold of them then, I call them at 6:30, 7 o'clock, hoping that they pick up the phone. Because these people don't have time to answer the phone, right? They're saving lives. So you got to also play it smart on who you pitch at the right times. So for example, if you're pitching, let's say a basic, like a head teacher, for example, in the school, you don't call them during school hours. But the good thing with school hours here, they're quite short. So you can call them after 4 o'clock, they're a bit more open. You call them at their lunch break, you can call them before school. So, you've got to think about it. But, for someone like that, you just got to understand from the initial contact if it's worth building rapport or if it's not building rapport. But a lot of the time, once you've broken through the first 5-10 seconds of the call, you've introduced the company, you've explained it, and you've seen if it's a bit more relevant, then they're always going to have time. Whether it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's always got a time. And that brings on to the next point, which is, when you're doing your pitch, right, however long, you want to do it, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, majority of the time is, if you're able to hold someone on the phone for 2 minutes, you should book them in, right? It's a standard that, we try and keep. Just because if someone's giving you 2 minutes of their time, you should be able to get to at least introducing the products, having a bit of rapport with them, and seeing if it's actually worth it for them. And then the next step is obviously the 10 minutes. If you can speak with someone for 10 minutes on the phone, right? The likelihood that they'll set the meeting is much higher than someone you speak to for 5 minutes. Just because they've given you so much time of their day. They understand that there's value behind the meeting. They're not just trying to rush you off the phone. So, try, if you can hold someone on the phone for 10 minutes, then the next bit, which is your sit rate or your meeting sat, which is the more important bit really, the percentage of that happening is a lot higher. So keep that in mind when you're on the phones. You obviously don't try and blag on and on and on if you've done the pitch. But if you have a good rapport with them, keep it going, and then obviously have a good close. So from then onwards, we'd go into the closing bit, right? So when you're closing someone, you've figured out with your questioning, you've guided them originally. So you've introduced the company, yourself, you've introduced what we do for people, directed to them. Then you've guided them with your questioning techniques. You've asked them questions about how old they are, what's your family doing over here, what's your plan for the future. You're planning on staying in the Middle East, you're planning on going back to the UK, you're planning on going to Australia, going to Thailand, you get all sorts of answers. So you need to, once you've guided the questions around to figure out what they want to do you've got a full image of what you can offer them, then you can say, then in your head it's time to close, right? And when it comes to closing, you'll probably hear this from a few of the more senior people, you've got to get some this is where you collect the details that are really important, right? So the key bits of information you would really need, I don't know if you guys have seen a booking sheet yet, or Have you seen? Yeah, definitely. But you know, on the booking sheet, you'll see there's different sections, right? So you got the normal information: name, job, age, all these things. So key bits of information you need in the booking sheet, which I've been told, which everyone's been told in that room and probably in this room as well, is first the email address, because where you're going to send the meeting invite to. So that's always key, because people will be like, "Oh, I'll text you my email on WhatsApp, or just call me back and we can arrange a time," and you don't want that to happen. So you want to get their email address, and you want to make sure as much as possible that you get their work email address. Why the work email address? Because their work email address is always connected to their calendar, always. So, you know, for example, if you send me the email for this meeting onto my personal calendar, I'd probably forgot it. But you send it to my work one, so I know, I open my laptop the first thing in the morning, I look at my calendar, I say, all right, 9 o'clock, I got a training session, I need to be there. So it's the same with people in all of the companies. Professionals around the world all use their work address to keep their calendar going. So yeah, work email is very key if you can get it. A second thing, obviously, when you are coming to your close is figure out that, you know, as much information as possible, because it's your advisor who's going to set the meeting, not you. And they need to get as much information out of them for you to be able to make them, you know, get the deal done really, and also make them, you know, understand a bit more about the prospect. So if you've only got their name and their company, it doesn't, you know, they'll still sit down with them, but it doesn't help the meeting, right? So what you want to be able to do on your close, right, is get their email, get their age. Age is very important. And I don't mean go on LinkedIn and, you know, do the math yourself. Oh, he went to school in 1995, he's probably this old. No, don't do that. Ask them the question, because their age determines what we offer. Age is so key. And also, if you ask the age question early enough, you can guide the question to however way you want it. So if someone's, let's say, someone's 60 plus, they don't need a savings plan, do they? No, they need to protect their assets. So that's when the tax side of things come in. If someone's 40, that's when they need to do the savings for their family, for the kids. If someone's even younger than that, you need to provide them with options. If someone wants to do property, you need to be able to determine from your close exactly what the meeting is going to be about. And that's what you provide to your consultant, who's going to set the meeting for yourself. So age is very key. The email address is very key. If they have any family, is also very key. So, you know, some people don't like to talk about their kids' ages or how many they've got, but just say, oh, is your family out here? That's when those questions come in. You already ticked all those details while you're asking the report questions. So you don't even have to ask them that at the end of the close. You know, a line which, you know, someone like Niall always uses is, can I confirm a few quick details with yourself? And then you can literally batter through the booking sheet. Another key area, especially when you're starting off, is obviously finding their salary, which I know a lot of new BDAs tend to, you know, be quite fearful of asking that question. But this is the trick I use, and this is the trick that's been successful every time I've used it. And it's the same trick I've been taught by the senior managers in the company, and people have trained me as well, is asking bracketed questions, right? So when you bracket a question, you're giving them a range. So if I was to ask you, you know, if I'm directly to you and I asked you, what's your salary? You're like, you could have all your work colleagues around you. You could be in a position where you don't want to expose your salary. You don't even want to tell someone on the phone what their salary is. But you'll see on the booking sheet, there's ranges on the booking sheet, right? So you ask them the same question. Look, I'm just going to give you a couple of brackets here. Just let me know which one you fall to. Just say between 1 to 4 which number you're in. So bracket number 1, are you between 20 to 30,000 dirhams? Bracket number 2, 30 to 50. Bracket number 3, 50 to 70. Bracket number 4, 70 plus. Which one do you fall into? 1 to 4. If someone says 2 on the phone, no one knows around them what they're talking about. But only I do and they do what we're talking about. So the reason we ask the salary question is, again, we're financial advisors, right? The whole point is to know how much money people can make, what's their liabilities, and how to build their assets. So if someone says, you know, I make 70 plus thousand, you could be all jumping up and down, oh my God, I got a big one, you know, this is going to be a great deal. But you've got to be able to ask them what's their disposable. That's key, right? If someone can make 100,000 dirhams a month, but they spend 90, on your lifestyle, on family, on schools, on all kinds of things. So you need to be able to find out what's that disposable. So that's the next question after that. So you'd be like, all right, let's say you get the brackets in, you say 70 plus, and you say, right, out of the money you make, how much would you say is disposable? You could invest in, we could, in the conversation with said advisor would be available. Would it be 10% of that, 20%, 30%? So giving them 3 options, 10, 20, 30, is another good questioning technique that people use, because if I gave you options, you'd only pick those options. You wouldn't stray away from them. So, a good one that, Nigel Green always uses is, would you like to go to Paris or Milan? You've heard this before, So the reason he says that, it's not because it's funny, but it works, right? You give someone 2 options or 3 options, they don't stray away. They don't go, no, actually 50%, or don't want to, 0. They give you the answer on those 3 options. Because your mind works in that sense that, in that moment, we need to make the decision on those 3. So, when it comes to the close, you want to figure out, those are the main key points. So the email address, the age, the family situation, and obviously how much they're making and what's disposable. Once you've done that on the close, you want to be able to ask them, you already know what's the meeting's about. So let's say you're speaking to someone who's 45, family's out here, they've recently moved out, they need to sort out the retirement strategy for themselves, they need to sort out the education for their kids. Then you round it up, being like, look, this is what we've spoken about, we talked about helping you in your retirement, we've helped you out with your education. Is there any other areas that you want to look into? Right, this is where cross-selling is massive. Right, you want to try and, the more services they can be more interested in, the more likely they sit the meeting, right? So if you can sit them down and you can go to your advisor and say, right, this person's in for, education, retirement, insurance, tax. If you can do 4, for example, you don't have to do 4 all the time. Some people want just 1. But the likelihood they sit the meeting is so much higher, like 90%. It's ridiculous. But yeah, from there, so you just want to round up the conversation they've had with themselves, just remind them. And then from there, you move into timings, right? When is the best time? So I don't know if you've done any sort of, pitch training when you did your week training and stuff like that, but when it comes to timings as well, and finding the best day, you sort of ask them, right, what's the best time for yourself? Are you better at the start of the week, end of the week, right? This is, again, the options. You're giving them 2 options here again, right? If someone says start of the week, what would you say? What would be your next line? Anyone?
Evening, afternoon. Morning, afternoon.
Morning, afternoon, yeah, but there's one step before it.
Do you just be like this Monday or Tuesday? Wow.
Yeah, so you find the day, right? You find the day first and you go into the evening and the morning. So you say, if someone says start of the week, all right, is Monday or Tuesday better for yourself? Monday. Okay, prefer you more for morning person, afternoon evening person for the call? Evening. Right, we got 2 slots available. We got 4 o'clock and we got 6 o'clock. Which of these suit you? Don't just say, we have the whole afternoon available for yourself. You give them timings that you're available at. Otherwise, a lot of people, we've had people in the other room there who've given the advisors a whole bunch of meetings on Friday because everyone's always free on Friday, but nothing Monday to Thursday, right? So you need to be very firm with them when you say, this is the timings, we work as well, right? We're not just working for them, we have our hours as well. We can't expect us to have a sit down and meeting at 10 p.m. at night just because you want to and then they don't sit the meeting. So you've got to be firm with your questioning technique there as well. And then obviously once you've got the time slot, you've got the date, you close the meeting then. You go, right, this is what I'm going to do for yourself. I'm going to pop over an email, right? Would you rather the meeting be, in person or, over a Teams call? We prefer those 2 options. I don't like using Zoom because Teams is more professional. When I think of Zoom, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but when I think of Zoom, it's more me catching up with friends or family. When you think about Teams, it's professional. Everyone's got Teams on their computers from work. Every office does it. So they have access to the Teams, whether it's their work account, whether it's their personal account, it's easy. But primarily, if they're in Dubai, like for you guys especially, try and get face-to-face, because the close rate and the meeting success on a face-to-face is so much higher. It's so much better. So you want to ask them when you're closing, obviously the date, the time, and how you want to have the meeting. Those are the three things when it comes to it.
Face to face.
Yeah.
Would it be better to have it here in the office, or us go to them, or like the advisor go to them too?
Both options. Your advisor should be ready to go, right? If there's a face-to-face, whether it's by the airport or it's in the office, they should be happy to take either on. Obviously, everyone prefers it in the office, so the prospect comes here. But if you've got to send your advisor, you've got to send your advisor. I mean, I've sent my advisor for a dinner at 8 o'clock on the other side of Dubai to close a prospect. So, if there's business to be had and it's a face-to-face, especially in Dubai, they will never say no. But yeah, so those are the three things: the date, the time, and the type of meeting they're going to face. And then after that, you want to soft close it, right? You want to just be like, if it's a Friday, what are you doing for the weekends? If it's Monday, so I hope the rest of the week goes well. Look forward to catching up with yourself. And this bit is very key as well, is the confirmation. You're reminding them, right? Let's say they have a meeting on a Tuesday. You're going to be like, right, what I'm going to do for yourself is on Monday, or if the meeting's Tuesday afternoon, then do it Tuesday morning. What I'm going to do for yourself is give you a quick call or a WhatsApp, just to remind you about the meeting, and to confirm that everything's running smoothly on both sides of the diary. Does that suit for yourself? 100% of the time, yes. They'll either say, I'm better on WhatsApp, just give me a quick text, or give me a call on that time and place. So, when you're rounding that up, you want to make sure they confirm all those things with yourself. And then you can say, well, thank you for your time, and then cut the phone, and then move on to the next one, right? But one of the things I forgot to mention at the start is we get told a lot about this. Well, when I joined initially, there was a massive emphasis on this, and obviously it led to me keeping it as a habit now, is when you pitch, guys, as much as you might have people around you who sat down, please stand up. When you're pitching especially, make sure you stood up. Because when you're stood up, you're more confident, you're walking around, you feel free. There's no, you're not tied up, your chest is out, you're able to actually have a proper conversation, especially if you're, like in the case you said there, if you're speaking to someone who's, the top CEO, they want to feel that prospects can smell fear, weirdly enough. They can hear it in your voice. They know if you're having a bad pitch, then they'll buy at it and they'll be like, no, I don't want to speak to you. But if you're confident when you go on the phones, you speak to someone, you're straight into the point, you know exactly what you're doing, and your pitch is smooth and efficient, they'll give you a time of day. Whether they're not interested, whether they are interested, they'll still give you a time of day. But again, I emphasize it again, stand up when you pitch. It's a classic sales technique that everyone's used throughout time. Well, since I've known. Anywhere you go, any videos you've seen, they always tell you to stand up. Just because you just get more confidence, your voice sounds better, all sorts of benefits behind it. But yeah, so just to round up everything, it goes, because there's a lot of obviously stuff that other people touch on when you're actually your trainings, which also tie into the pitch, because the pitch is the main bit, right? When it comes, as I said there, we'll wrap it up. So your introduction is again, I said there, what did I say in the introduction?
Straight to the point, introduce yourself and
yeah.
the company.
Perfect. Perfect. And what do you use in the middle?
So establishing questions.
Yeah. What else?
In the middle or the
In the middle.
products that we offer, you want to ask them their age, you want to see where they work more specifically, maybe you've spoken to different colleagues in the past. There's loads of things you can talk about in the middle. You freestyle.
Good. And what's also very key when you're asking questions, and
find something in common, try to get a lot of yeses.
yeah, there's one big thing that that's a very good one. Always make sure they're speaking more than you. You want to listen more than they speak more, because they'll slip up and give you more details than you expected. Key thing again, use LinkedIn. Right, use your knowledge of LinkedIn to direct the questions to them. Right, if you see someone on LinkedIn and you know he's worked 45 years in his life, there's no point having a conversation about, oh, do you need short-term investment? No, I mean, long-term investment. There's no point. He's 75, he's 65. They want to retire the next year or so. So you've got to think to yourself, if I'm going to go in and I'm going to speak to this person, I need at least have a clue about what he wants to go in and do. Don't obviously go in directing with what you think is right, but at least you know, right, this guy probably doesn't want to speak about saving, probably wants to speak about helping him with tax. So, use of LinkedIn is super key. I couldn't say it again and again, but it is very important. And then obviously, from then on, you've got all the information, you've done the introduction, you know exactly what they want, you've guided them down the questions, and then your close. What's the main things that you need from your close?
So, email address, work email, age, family situation, and then earnings, which you bracket, your disposable, and then obviously you go forward with timings, dates.
Yeah, perfect. One thing I will say though, with the earnings question, if someone is a CEO, a C-suite individual, there is sometimes no point asking the question of how much they earn, because it's quite a bit. You'll more go into the more disposable side of things. So if it is obviously a investment meeting, for example, you want to ask them how much is disposable for this service that they have. But if it's for other things like the tax side of things, how much, how many assets do you have, what's the value of your assets in cash, the cash value of it, then you also give them brackets again. You don't say, 10, 20, 20%, but you say, are you, between 100, 250,000, 250,000, 500,000, 500,000 to a million or million plus. So same way, you just change the bracketing styles a bit more. So yeah, when it comes to your pitch again, just keep the structure, right? Make sure you ask the right questions, you guide them down the way you want to guide them down. You control the conversation and the meet and the call, but at the same time, try and get them to speak as much as possible, because they will slip up. But is there any other questions you have?
What do you do about currency?
Just keep it with the local currency they're in. So if someone's in Saudi, speak about with Riyal. If someone's in Dubai, dirham. And obviously don't go converting it on the phone call. Don't go, oh, what's Riyal and dirham? Just write it down and then do the conversion after. But a lot of the areas, Qatar, Saudi, is 1-to-1. So similar value to the dirham. So unless you go into Oman and all the Kuwait side and all that kind of thing, then you'll struggle a bit, but it's a simple multiplication. But yeah, any other questions about your pitch? Is there anything else you want to know a bit more? Anything else? All good? Perfect. Well, good luck, guys, and hopefully you smash it.